All right. Out of the warm and sunny upper Midwest, welcome to Lorem Ipsum Live. We are Squidicide and Logos, and today is Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. Apologies, we seem to be having some technical difficulties with a camera, so my big ugly mug is what you get to see until Logos joins us on video. Uh,
I'm still here though.
yeah.
Not getting off that easy.
Yeah, no. Um, so yeah, I guess what's been going on with me is a lot of stuff. Most of it resulting in not a lot of enthusiasm for very many things recently, which is why I wasn't here last week. Trouble sleeping, tired as hell. Uh, it appears to be the time of year in which children run wild and go crazy, and marriages have problems. Not mine, thankfully, but a bunch of people I know. Um, and uh, people get sick, and yeah, it's been a couple of weeks where the stress level has been high, but things are on the uptick. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's about where we're at.
Okay.
Sorry, I was going through the permissions on the Discord server. Somebody said, I think it was Lord Willow was talking to us on the YouTube stream right before it started.
Hmm.
Uh, Wanting to know, or he said he probably won't be joining us on Discord after because he's not a fan of Push to Talk, and I didn't understand why he'd be on Push to Talk. So I was going through
Gotcha.
the roles and permissions trying to figure out why the off-air open discussion or the on-air question and answer session might be PTT only for people.
Yeah. I I had to do um some work on it earlier in the week, and it was giving me hassle too.
Yeah, I'm not finding anything in there that would cause this issue, so that's weird.
Well, anyway, uh, I'm assuming because I'm still having trouble getting in onto the system that we have people around at this point.
Uh, Willow Gaming is watching us. There's at least one other currently watching. Hello, viewers. Um, yeah, just how was your week, Logus? Unless you'd like me to keep yammering while you work on technical issues.
I could talk while I work.
Okay.
I worked some tech stuff before. Um, I don't know. I spent some time with you playing some games. Chilling out, working on the house stuff more. Uh, we got our magnet fishing kit, so we can start magnet fishing.
Nice.
Unfortunately, I put one. It has optional places to put the hook, the eyelet for the carabiner for the rope, and I put both of them on, and I had forgotten that we had discussed this previously, and we decided to go with only one of them. And I was a good little boy, and I used thread locker
Oops.
on it, and I was able to get it partially undone before the thread locker set in. And soaking it with WD-40 hasn't worked entirely, but I also live in an apartment with no access to a garage or vice or anything like that. So I've been having difficulties um, getting that undone.
Gotcha.
So I'm working on that.
Acetone.
Acetone will take out thread locker.
It might.
The stuff I saw online said to use WD-40.
Yeah. WD-40 is a penetrant, and it's going to get in there and do the thing. But if you're having trouble with the thread lock not dissolving or not letting go, acetone will also penetrate the threads and maybe do a better job of dissolving whatever Gorilla Bond thread lock you used.
maybe. Um, I'm not at this point convinced one way or the other. But what else have I done? Looked into running my own streaming software. Hit a bunch of dead ends. Uh, Looking for something I actually felt like I was competent enough to actually run, so that when one of us isn't available to stream, both of us are competent streamers, rather than just one of us knowing what he's doing.
Oh, okay.
Um, Also, I do want to. For those of us that were around at the after show last week, one of our regulars revealed that they are a chef, and that they shared some of their food that they've done. And I would say a little more than dabble in cooking, but I'm by no measure a professional chef. I am a passionate home cook, and so I've been meaning to do a cooking series on my private channel for a while now, and the regular Ravensburn agreed to critique my cooking and show me what I'm doing wrong. Because as you're aware, my method of cooking is to learn how to cook is to see a food that I want to make, create it, and then eat it, and then from there see what I did wrong, and then look up recipes and compare them, and then kind of come up with my own like ballpark average that I like.
Yeah.
Which is why my pierogi are probably not what you'd call traditional pierogi, but I don't care because they're delicious.
Can
Um,
confirm.
and my chebbarek are on point though.
I mean, that's
Um,
fair. As long as it's not as bad as Gordon Ramsay's pad thai, I think it'd be alright.
I heard Gordon Ramsay's pad thai was just fine.
I don't know. I don't know anything about Gordon Ramsay. Like, Gordon, I mean, please come yell at me, I guess. But, now there's an episode where he goes to Thailand and makes pad thai for a famous Thai chef. And at the end of it,
Mhm.
this Thai chef takes a bite and he says, "This is not pad thai." He makes very disgusted, angry faces. Just puts it back on the table and walks away.
Huh. I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah. Are you, by any chance, paying attention to YouTube chat while you do all this?
I'm running several different things. Sorry.
Uh, Beardamus
What's up?
arrived and announced, "'Tis I!" And I hadn't had a chance to say hi yet, Beardamus. Um, Willow Gaming says, acetone will usually work for what you're trying to do. WD-40 needs to soak for like 3 days plus, 72 hours plus. And when he says
Oh,
soak,
good.
he means soak.
Yeah. No, I we have a dedicated can for this particular procedure,
Rock on. He
and
also says, huh?
it's still soaking.
Rock on. Um, he also says he can give you a crash course on OBS. Uh, I think I could probably do that too, come to think of it. But,
I was trying to be more or less self-sufficient. I don't need to learn by myself, but I find that things that I have failed at 10,000 times that I succeed finally once, like building computers, I tend to know a lot more than what I did before, and you learn so many of the structural scaffolding that surrounds the subject that just following a recipe or just following instructions doesn't give you. Um, which I'm a big fan of that scaffolding around subjects because I feel that it's important to know how things go wrong so that way you can see them coming before they go all the way wrong and make them right.
yeah.
Uh, Something I learned in my study of history is that seems to be an important thing that people don't put enough appreciation on. Sorry, my phone apparently wants me to reboot everything, so that's what I have to do.
Ah.
and hopefully that'll correct the problem. It's got a bad IP import assignment that is incorrect and won't let me change it.
Oh, yeah, that's unfortunate. Willow came back and said OBS has some quirks that help to have shown, gives the aha moment when you are resetting up after every Windows update. I don't have to reset up Windows or OBS after every Windows update. Haven't in like 3 years, 4 years. I just make sure I keep OBS up to date and save my profiles, and then just reload them. I'm pretty sure that's a thing you can do.
Yeah. As soon as I figure out what you just said, I'll get on that and do it.
Well, I don't want the next 5 minutes to turn into an impromptu OBS tutorial, which is what it
Yeah.
would have to be to explain what I just said. Oh, you
Okay.
have custom sound software. That, yeah. And you're still using OBS? I mean, yeah, I guess. Uh, I'm just a scrub. I don't custom sound nothing.
Aha.
Will there be a face? Will it be
Um.
your face?
Oh, if I'm lucky, I'll do this without putting it upside down. Yeah, that'll be just fine. Lighting looks fine. You guys are getting what I have. How about that?
That'll do. I'm surprised you didn't grab a cat. Just be like,
Why would I do that?
why wouldn't you do that?
They don't want to be here.
Alright, fine.
Okay.
Anyway,
So, you had a topic that you wanted to talk about today.
I do, but just to point it out before I forget,
Yeah.
Willow did post the Curb Your Food Pad Thai Gordon Ramsay video in the Discord server. If you want
Okay,
to give
so
that a
we'll
look
stop
at
the
the
stream
same
and watch
time.
that now.
Yeah, no.
That's not what we do here.
No, but I wanted to point it out so I didn't forget.
We're not a reaction channel.
No, we're not a reaction. I mean, we could be, I suppose, but
I mean, I think we're gonna be during one of like the State of the Union coming up.
fine.
I'll do it.
Nah, I mean, me too, but
I'm already writing drinking game rules.
oh, is that how we're doing? You're gonna kill me, and it's gonna be great.
I had to stop watching the Trump ones because they were too dangerous to drinking games with.
Yeah, voting rights legislation. Uh, so the topic for discussion tonight is, and I don't know how much discussion is gonna be going on because this is kind of a thick topic that, like looking into didn't start until today. Like, this was the first time I'd heard of the For the People Act, HR 1. I know it
I
was.
heard about
Hmm?
the first two times it came around.
I thought this was only the second time it came around.
When it was being built, it was already getting criticized.
Ah,
Lawrence Lessig was on point before this was actually fully finished being written,
gotcha.
and then the 2019 version was passed and then not all the way through. Anyways, I'm
Yeah,
jumping every gun.
Mitch McConnell did the dumb, but so yeah, no, that's what we're talking about tonight. Is this HR 1 that's made it through the For the People Act that's made it through the House yet again. The House passed it on the 3rd. Um, and what it is, what it do, whether or not it'll pass in the Senate, which is a question.
Yeah.
Uh, I gotta be honest, I haven't seen much anything in here that I don't like.
I don't like that a lot of the reforms aren't mandatory.
Oh, is that the
Like
case?
the campaign finance reforms, like the participation in the low uh, in the small donor 6-to-1. So there's a part of the thing is a program to um, basically match 6-to-1 small donations from small donors to congressional campaigns, up to $600. Um, and basically, they for every dollar you give, they'll give six out of a fund which is generated from put together from a earmark off of fees and fines charged to businesses on violations of federal law.
Okay.
So the bill contains a lot of stuff. So like anybody who says that they're doing tax dollars for this nonsense is straight up lying, because it says right in the bill. There's a whole section in it in the title in the article that's saying that it cannot, no matter what gets changed in the bill, in order for it to be legitimate, it cannot include tax dollars as funding for these campaign funds, public campaign funds. They have to come from fines and other sources of revenue, not tax related, because otherwise, of course, people would flip out. Um,
Yeah, I don't want my tax dollars going to support Nancy Pelosi's campaign or whatever the fuck, what have you.
that's a debatable topic about stuff for later. I could argue one way or the other. With the way things currently are, I'm happier that it's not. Um, the cultural change in the United States. Let's talk about that. But yeah, so anyway, it also limits individual contributions to $1,000 tops instead of the current top out, which is $2.9 thousand for individual contributions. There's some other
For
stipulations and
personal
features.
contributions, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, individual personal contributions. No. Your personal funds can't exceed 50,000. 500,000. Sorry.
I mean, I thought Citizens United said that it was unconstitutional to limit independent political expenditures by corporations, labor unions, and other associations.
Uh, yes. But okay, so this does a lot of other things too. Like, one of the big things it does is redefine what a contribution is, to include all of those things that actually matter. Not all of them, but a much better net at catching more of them. Because we're currently, like, if everyone on Fox News, let's say hypothetically, everyone on Fox News started supporting one candidate or the other, and started spending a bunch of time making YouTube videos using corporate money to support one candidate over the others, giving one-sided information out. Um, Everyone with any purpose of thought can see how that would be the corporation essentially giving a massive contribution to one candidate over the other, right?
Right.
Because that has real value to the campaign. Uh, Current law says, nah, dog, that's just people expressing free speech. That has nothing to do with campaign finance or anything. So people like corporations can do that. They can use their platform. They can go to their own businesses and tell their employees, like what my previous employer did, and give them a piece of paper saying that this particular candidate's policies favor our company. We can't tell you who to vote for, but just so you know, your bonuses and raises rely on the policies of this candidate passing, which is literally what they told me. Which, okay, it's a Fortune 500 company, so they did that. They did the other stuff, and then they gave to a PAC, and then they gave to a super PAC. I can only give $2.9 thousand out, but they can give, I think it was 11 individuals sources gave out like a third of all campaign money in the 2016 election.
Jesus.
And it's taking, by the way, it takes this long to figure that out because until this law that they're passing with HR1, all those sources are protected, which is why the ACLU is getting all antsy in their pantsy about HR1.
All right. So,
Yeah,
do we want to just go down what the bill is supposed to do? I guess.
I don't think we can do that. It's too big. I tried putting together a bullet point chronological blah 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 for it. After spending like 2 hours trying to do that, I realized that I was on Title 1 still.
Well, Wikipedia already did it though.
I mean, I'm not Wikipedia. I can't build this in a cave.
Yeah, I know, but just the basics, the layman's terms of what it's doing.
I'm a historian, man. I don't. My default isn't Wikipedia unless I'm on like the morning of. Oh wait. So okay, I've become a slightly better, more.
HR1 is massive.
I mean, yeah, no. That's honestly, I think that's gonna be my excuse because it's HR was so big that any research I did into it, considering there's multiple versions of it for multiple years.
I mean, the
Um,
current version is up on Congress website, but it's huge.
yeah, no, yeah. So
All right,
Wiki
so
it was just huge.
Willow says that it's so big that the wiki is almost too boiled down, but I feel
Yeah.
like an expression of what this thing is supposed to do, even in like super stupid, too simple layman's terms, is probably a good idea.
Oh yeah. Okay. This is exactly what I was about to say. This is what we should do.
Yeah,
Page.
yeah,
Okay. No, we can do this. We can handle that. We can not, but still kind of actually read the wiki to people.
yeah. I mean,
I have my own notes. I actually have some math I did. I wanted to share eventually.
all right. So where do you want to start? Just start at the top. I'll read the wiki to people. I didn't study poli sci. I'm fine with this.
Oh, okay. So about that particular thing, because that's come up a couple of times. Um, I'm going to say that an important thing that people need to remember when they're thinking about political stuff, political science, political philosophy, policies, and whatnots. Uh, like economics, one of the things you learn about in poli sci is that much like economics, 99.9% of everyone ever born doesn't give a fuck what things should do or should be. So political science and political philosophy tend to only really be terribly valuable as a hard data point after the fact. In real time, it's a completely useless thing to have because no one fucking listens to people know what they're talking about. I mean, just ask any doctor.
I mean, that's fine as long as our viewers understand that I don't know what I'm talking about. And this Wikipedia article is exactly like if I was going to research this thing 3 days in advance, this is where I would start. I'd look at the overview, this summary, Cliff's Notes version that is the Wikipedia article, and then go down to the sources because Wiki, has this thing has 92 sources listed. Not all of
Oh, yeah,
them can be bullshit.
I'm gonna share this. Give me a second. This is what I was working with. It is a bit more detailed. And where is our thing? There we go. So the link I gave you is the wiki quote unquote kind of thing I was using to do the research. Um,
Uh,
it's a complete annotated, completely sourced analysis and explanation of each section and um, each title and each title and I'm my brain.
Subtitles and yeah.
Oh, hold on, that's a fact check. That's not the right one. No, yeah, I gave you the right one. Uh, articles, titles and articles for in each section and subsection. So it kind of goes through things, does bullet points, and then it shows you the sources for those particular claims that they're making, which is what I was pouring through myself all day. And I mean, the scroll bar for this thing is intense.
Yeah.
From the Brennan Center for Justice. These guys are legit. Did some research on these guys today. I'm going to be coming to these guys for more sources when we talk about stuff because these guys are pretty rad for a lot of stuff.
Neat.
But anyway, you were saying about things.
Well, since I'm doing the wiki thing, right, I'd probably start with what it's trying to do for voting rights. So it's trying to we're going to require states to offer same-day voter registration, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Uh, we wouldn't have had the problems we had in either of the last two presidential elections if that were the case, I think.
Well, that and like Florida would have a lot more people who are alive. And the same thing with Georgia. Georgia especially. Georgia would have been under a completely different governor.
Um, it also uh, would require them to permit voters to make changes to their registration at the polls. And early voting requirements establishes automatic voter registration, kind of like North Dakota has, I guess. North Dakota doesn't technically have voter registration. You just have to be a resident with an ID. But, yeah. Um,
So on that, the way it does that is, and this is actually something I watched a video today, Forbes, about this, and he was talking about how everyone who uses the DMV and is on food stamps and is on welfare, anybody who uses a public program is automatically registered to vote. And that includes lots of illegals, parentheses, asterisk, fact check, no, it doesn't. All those programs require social security numbers, so they aren't eligible at all for any of that. But guess what? They still pay taxes into it because there's a lot of ways that people pay taxes, and even people who are paid on the table end up paying taxes in some fashion by a larger percentage than Americans actually ever get credit for. But anyway, so he's talking about how anybody who works with a federal program of any kind or works with a federal office and has to give them their address and information, they'll all be automatically registered. Like that's supposed to be a terrible, terrible thing that the people who are living on the edge of society because of the way things are running all of a sudden now have a easier way of accessing the method for change is a problem.
right? Oh no, y'all, we can't let the poors vote.
Yeah, and I think that the telling thing on that was that on their own YouTube channel, on the Forbes YouTube channel, on that video, he was getting fucking roasted by in the comment section by his own folks about his complaints about like everything about the bill that he was complaining about. It was pretty fun. I recommend watching it if you've got a spare couple minutes.
I mean, not right this minute, but yeah, I should do later.
Yeah.
Uh, Willow just quoted Heinlein. When a place gets crowded enough to require IDs, social collapse is not far away. It is time to go elsewhere.
Well, okay, so about IDs. I'm opposed to voter ID in the United States right now with the way things work. For two reasons. One, with the way things work, it's a barrier to people voting who don't have a reasonable means to overcoming those barriers because of the way society is set out. And two, there's no fucking national registry of voters, so it's fucking pointless. And most states don't even have a statewide registry that's effective same day. So I could literally just take a picture of myself because they don't fucking scan that shit. They don't run it through like a bar bouncer who actually can figure this shit out. It's just some old guy's like, yeah, that's a piece of paper with your face on it, and they just fucking go in. That's like everyone I've ever talked to about the voter ID. So I could take your ID, go to North Dakota, put my face on your ID because they don't know how fucking old I am. I could hang out inside like I have been for the last year and be white enough to go in and pretend I'm. They don't fucking know. The voter ID doesn't do fucking anything. So I oppose voter ID in this country right now because it doesn't do anything other than be a barrier. It doesn't secure anybody's vote, and it's just a barrier to people getting the chance to vote.
Yeah, no, you're right. North Dakota's even had that problem because, like I said, we don't have voter registration in North Dakota. You just have to be a resident of North Dakota, right?
Yeah.
I think it was back not long after the protests over the pipeline. What's the thing I'm thinking of? The Standing Rock. That.
Yeah.
The state of North Dakota, in its infinite wisdom, decided that you couldn't vote in North Dakota unless you had a street address to put on your identification. And the problem was that most natives in the reservations on North Dakota didn't have street addresses. They had,
It had to have a USPS street address.
yeah, like a
So they have a
legal street address.
yeah, yeah.
not GPS coordinates or it's over there, which had previously worked. If you and your neighbor both went and you could witness each other, yeah, we live here. Here's my driver's license. It says I live on the res because the res is my address. They'd let them
Yeah.
vote. Not anymore, and as far as I'm aware, that hasn't been changed. I think the reservation is going through and trying to uh, get the post office to assign addresses to
Yeah.
places. But yeah, that was a change to voter ID law that did nothing but suppress the Native American vote in a year where it would have made a big difference.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
We just don't have the infrastructure in this country. Like, I looked at the list and the way that people do voter ID around the world. So, like, almost without exception, everyone that has voter ID has an active and useful registration of voters that can check that. Like Mexico, there was a big thing about how Mexicans have to do voter ID. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that Mexicans don't have an automatic right to vote. They have the right to register to vote, and then you have to go and get an application and stuff done. You get fingerprinted, you get your signature and stuff coded, you get positively ID'd, and then you're issued a voter registration card. It's all free. It's all free, but you have to go and actually do it at a federal office. Now, that being said, Mexicans are used to more bureaucracy than we are in the United States. Like, you think, oh, American government's so fucking twisted and blah 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 red tape. Go to any Latin American, anybody who was colonized by the Spanish or the British, and they will tell you that, with the exception of like Australia and Canada, which have really, in New Zealand, they've broken those bonds of red tape in the last like 20 years. Like the old colonies, uh, you have to wait in line to get in line. It's ridiculous. It's my I remember my professor telling me how when he was studying at the university there, he had to stand in one line to get paper at the stationery store and another line to get writing utensils at the stationery store because it was a federally funded stationery store. And so because they're tax coded differently, they were separated in the store that way for just to make it easier on the bookkeepers.
all
So
right,
they're used to that kind of red tape. That's a whole different thing, but that's not the way we are here, right? So the people comparing the two things are being a little.
that's
Anyway.
fair. So yeah, no, automatic voter registration of eligible citizens who provide information to state agencies, right?
Yeah.
Um, Also expands opportunities to vote by mail and would make Election Day a federal holiday. Which sounds neat, but I was thinking about this one earlier, and I don't think making Election Day a federal holiday is going far enough. Because, I mean, we've got a lot of federal holidays that a lot of employers just ignore.
Yeah.
Uh, so if you make it a mandatory holiday, then yeah, sure. Everybody gets paid. Anybody with a job gets paid.
Yeah.
Um, although I am a fan of UBI, that's a different episode. Um, yeah, they have to. It would require states to offer online voter registration, including managing their own, like individuals managing their own voter registration information. So that's pretty
Hmm.
neat. I'm trying to find anything that might be even remotely like discussion worthy, not just us nodding at each other going, yeah, yeah, that's good.
Uh.
Um,
Okay. There is a so it has a thing which is that uh according to the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, the states have some authority over their own things, and elections are one of them. So a lot of the stuff that's really cool that we like uh, automatically passed for federal elections that are done through certain means that connect via certain services and you know FEC nonsense categorizations and blah blah blahs. But a lot of the bill, and this is my only concern with the bill right now, is that even if it passes, we're looking at maybe 10 years of courts sitting around going through lawsuits on this bill, like line by line, section by section, um, because a lot of this stuff is borderline constitutional. the way things currently are set. Um, so like mandating a registry is fine. They can do that. But mandating same day voting, they can't really do that according to the Constitution unless the states are okay with that.
You mean unless the states
Uh,
decide to fight it?
no, so the bill gets passed, blah blah blah, and then with the way the 10th works is that the states will then have to implement the law or not. So the only way it becomes a law that actually affects them is if they go, yeah, sure, fine.
Or the
Um,
federal government goes, no, you have to. It says shall, not may.
yeah, uh, that's one of the things of federalism. Shalls and mays are often not shalls or mays. Uh, so that's my concern with this, that we're talking about many years in many courts with this particular Supreme Court going over things line by line, dismissing large, vast chunks of it. So, like the registration for 16 and 17-year-olds who can legally vote for local elections in a lot of places, but not the federal election. Um, that's probably going to get thrown out.
Well, I mean, they want the bill is supposed to be allowing early registration of 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in advance of becoming 18. So as soon as they turn 18, they can just vote right away, right?
Yep.
I don't have a problem with that. That makes it easier for newly minted adults to exercise their rights as adults. I do like that they threw out an amendment that would have allowed 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in federal elections. Because I don't know if we've touched on this before, but if we're going to define the age at which a person is an adult, then that is the age at which a person is an adult. If they're going to be allowed to enlist and vote at 18, then you should be able to smoke and drink and buy guns at 18. If they're going to be able to vote at 16, that means they're an adult, and they should be able to smoke and drink, buy guns, and enlist at 16. If a 16-year-old is a kid, don't let them do adult things.
So, I have I kind of have 2 points of view on that. One that's way more liberal, one that's not nearly as liberal at all.
Okay.
From a from an ideological standpoint, from a theoretical, from a philosophical standpoint, I think it makes sense to go as low as 12. Because starting at age of 12, the human brain is capable of understanding relatively complex ideas. There aren't actually that many 12-year-olds, or 13-year-olds, or 14-year-olds, or 15-year-olds, or 6-year-olds. The age of our country is relatively flat age-wise, even though it's still more top-heavy than previous generations, previous parts of our history. Way more pointy, way fatter at the top than it's ever been. Right, we're the oldest nation we've ever been. Average median age of 38.1 ish, give or take. Right.
Yeah.
So the average American is under 40 years old right now. But depending on where you are, it'll go one way or the other. But on average, our age categories are kind of like that. So having a few extra bars on the bottom isn't really going to do a whole lot in terms of now all of a sudden, TikTok is the way we deliver the State of the Union or anything like that. But at the same time, these 12-year-olds, because I know how I was thinking as 12. I was curious about the world, but I didn't have a whole lot of motivation to actually go and learn anything. There is the issue that a lot of people bring up of it's easier to coerce children and to pressure them into voting one way or the other.
Yeah.
But statistics show that kids are no more or less. Kids in the past have been no less or more knowledgeable about the issues than adults who vote on regular things all the time.
That doesn't mean
Um,
they're no more or less coercible than adults that vote, and that's my biggest issue with it.
uh,
Dude, when I was 16 years old, if I wanted to get to any place where I could vote, there would have been a requirement. Somebody would have told me, "Hey, you're going to vote this way, or we're not driving you to the polls."
uh, over 40% of Americans vote with the thought in their mind of how people consider their voting, regardless of age. It's not. It's still lower than for kids, but I would say, statistically speaking, the difference is close enough for that to be a discussion at least.
That's
On
fair.
the practical side of things, the utilitarian in me says, motherfuckers, we should not have the right to vote. It should be something that you unlock as a feature of knowing what the fuck you're talking about. That would be the most practical way of doing a government, is have people who have passed the citizenship test, people who have passed civics class, people who have passed the Constitution comprehension test, people who have studied the history of the Constitution in the United States and have passed the test, and people who have done some sort of service to the country of some kind, military, public works, social services, fundraising, something. Um, that would make the most sense to have people who vote. But that's incredibly illiberal. Uh, I
Uh,
would never refer to that as a democracy because it's not.
yeah. Like like both of these scenarios you've presented, I can't do anything other than go no, no.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is though. So if we're gonna go really, really practical, most people won't be able to vote because most Americans know nothing at all about politics, about mechanics of governments, about the Constitution. Most Americans could not pass the citizenship test that is given to new citizens.
That's fair.
Um,
I've seen that test. We had a guy in my unit when I was in the Marine Corps from Mexico that was having to take the test to get his citizenship, and he
mhm.
was studying for it while he was still enlisted. And there were some questions on there. I was like, "Fuck, I need to know this. Why don't I know this?"
Yeah. So I mean, if nothing else, like in Illinois, apparently, at least for some time, you had to pass the citizenship tests, a version of the citizenship test from their civics module in order to pass high school. That's not a bad idea,
It's not the worst idea I've ever heard for sure.
and it's definitely a sneaky way of doing what I'm talking about.
It is. We're missing some stuff in the YouTube chat here. Willow said, also, if a kid is going to be 18 by the time of an election, why not vote in the primary for that general?
Yeah.
I'd be all right with that. If you're going to be able to vote in the general anyway, why not participate in the preliminary process?
Yeah.
Uh, Beardamus said, fucking boomers. Willow comes back at us again. We send a lot of mixed signals of what an adult is here in the U.S. Is it 18, 21, 13, 14? Depends on what is being applied and what state.
See, that's what I'm saying.
And you're right. Honestly, I think we either need to decide that, we're treating 18-year-olds like adults. 18 is an adult. You can do whatever the fuck adults can do at 18. Or we need to recognize that the human brain isn't done developing until age 25, and everybody under the age of 25 is a child.
Um,
Nobody enlists under 25, drinks, smokes, none of it. Can't vote. You gotta wait until you're 25 and your brain settled the fuck down. You got all that crazy hormonal bullshit out of your system.
I think if we're going to have arbitrary things like you must be an adult to vote, I think that would be the way to go. Is 20 to 21 somewhere in there? 21 to 25, sorry, somewhere in that spectrum. It would be the thing. I'm gonna respond to Beardamus Prime real quick. So only landowners can vote. No, actually, if I had my druthers, if you owned land, you'd have to take the test every fucking year. Um, but anyway, uh, no, I just I also want a world where education is the way it should be in this country because currently education is gate kept away from people who need it the most.
Right?
Um, so
Stop tying that shit to property taxes would be a good place to start.
I would say that since my two ideas of what I think make the most sense, either philosophically or in a utilitarian practicality sense, since neither of those are going to work, neither of those are acceptable, neither of those are realistic. Uh, I think coming to a compromise like the 21 to 25-year-old thing, where we do pick a hard line, and that's the same thing for everything across the board, would make the most sense. When it comes to voting, I think it's a little different than the rest, simply because whether or not I can own a gun or serve the military has nothing to do with how I'm going to be expected to be able to breathe or drink water in the future, or uh, whether or not my sister owns her body, or whether or not the government owns her body, which are, those are pretty important topics that I don't think has a whole lot to do with everything else an adult has to be with. I think people should have more agency in their life politically than they do over other things, because it's such an important.
That's fair. I mean, Roger makes a good point. He says he go with 25, except that he was slave labor on the farm. I used his real name, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Fuck.
Of course, nobody knows till he said that. Way to go.
I'm a dumb. Anyway, done with college by 25, yada yada. Or why not just let people, coming back to, he posted this earlier and we missed it, why not just let people that live somewhere just fucking vote? Why isn't residency for a period of time and proof that taxes are paid enough?
Yeah.
Sorry. Fuck. Anyway.
All right. So we're not going to get anywhere if we keep talking about the chat here, because this is live.
It is live. I mean, this is doing it live. This is what we do.
Yeah.
Anyway, the bill also prohibits the practice of voter caging and restricts the practice of voter roll purges by limiting states' ability to remove registered voters from the rolls and setting conditions for when they could do so.
Alternatively, hear me out here, we could instead impose a penalty of $100 per unpurged voter. So that if a voter is supposed to be purged at some point before an election and they're not purged, the person who's supposed to purge them from the voter rolls and the voter registrar is personally fined $100 per name.
Of unpurged voters.
Yeah. With no penalty at all if they purge someone who wasn't supposed to be purged. Just hear me out on that one. How's that for a solution?
It sounds like it would make the problem worse.
Unfortunately, you're not part of the state legislature voting on that right now.
Is this a thing that Wisconsin is doing?
No, not Wisconsin. Georgia, I believe.
How old is too old to vote? Says Willow.
Well, I think if you're retired at 65, fuck it. You're retired, bro. That being said, I also feel like rewarding someone who still manages to make it to the polls as they get older. That being said, I think this still gives merit to my. Do you still remember how the Constitution works?
I mean, that's
idea?
a thing. That is an idea. But I think there's some merit to the how old is too old to vote question. Because as human medical technology advances and human societies advance, and more old people continue to survive for longer and longer, if we're trying to make actual political progress, that process gets just immeasurably slowed down by the continued existence of, well, right now, the boomers in politics. Like, if you take this whole setting and move it back 100 years, none of those motherfuckers would be alive or cogent enough to be in politics. The entire average age of Congress people would be like 30 years younger.
Actually, the age of Congress doesn't actually shift that much. It's basically the same as it's been since the founding.
Really?
That's a fun, weird fact I learned from studying history. The House is always about the same age, and the Senate's always about the same age. You're always like 50 to 80 years old for the Senate, and like 30 to 60 years old for the House on average. Like, it's always been the same. Like, presidents are always been about the same age too. It's pretty ridiculous. Our politicians are always the same fucking age in this country. Fucking Ramses, the goddamn pharaoh, was fucking 85 when he fucking died.
Thank you for clarifying that was sarcasm. Although, if we get advanced warning of my death and people want to throw me a death party, just, say the word. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by chat again. I enjoy the interaction.
That's fine.
Derpader. Also restores voting rights to felons who complete prison terms.
Like they should.
Like they should. It strengthens the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act I don't really care what this does as long as it requires that those votes be counted. I cannot tell you how pissed off I was when I found out that my absentee vote, if I voted in Afghanistan in state elections or some shit, my
Hmm.
absentee vote might not get counted. Like if the decision in the election was obvious and had been made before my vote got counted, they wouldn't even bother opening the envelope.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that comes down to a lack of funding. Like in Wisconsin, that happened to a lot of guys in Wisconsin, where our voter for the soldiers who were voted overseas via absentee, the state, the governor, for reasons on I don't understand, at the time decided that funding elections was not his priority, and just there wasn't really the funding in the budget to open ballots that were statistically irrelevant. They got to open eventually. They just were never counted as part of the election.
that's real stupid.
Yeah,
Every vote should be opened and counted, and there should be no excuse as to why there weren't.
yeah.
Um,
If we're gonna bother doing the thing, if we're gonna pay the price for democracy, fuck, let's get the thing
right.
right. Democracy is a super fucking expensive government to have. Out of all the forms of government to have, it is the most energy intensive. It requires the most work by the most people, requires the most oversight, requires the most trust, the most education. It requires the most of everything. It requires the most resources, supplies, even. Like it costs nothing for a king to go, I'm gonna change the name of the country. Eat dicks. And the next time they publish books, name the country different. There's no other expense. They don't have to get $1 million worth of ballots out to all the people of Turkmenistan to vote yay or nay on that shit.
Right.
Um, so like, if we're gonna pay for literally and figuratively pay for democracy, we should be getting a lot more out of it.
That's true.
Texas is the state that has a bill that would fine every voter, fine the Secretary of State for every voter left on the rolls after they should have been removed.
Why the fuck are we even purging voter rolls anyway? Like, I understand if there's a reason, like, hey, we should take this guy off our voter rolls. We know he moved from Texas to Arkansas because reasons. I don't know why anybody even lives there, Arkansas
Yeah,
or Texas. Um, he's got we. He hasn't renewed his driver's license in Texas. He doesn't have an address in Texas. He doesn't pay taxes in Texas. Take him off. But I mean, what the fuck else are they doing? How do they decide? Because I know Wisconsin had huge problems with voter purges.
I got purged from the voter rolls.
Why though?
Well, it had nothing to do with the fact that I was one of the other people who got purged. Uh, okay, I must not be using sarcasm. In the state of Wisconsin, mysteriously, that is sarcastic. The majority of people who were purged off the rolls were found to be uh, on record as being either Latino or black. And this happened right before the recall election for our previous governor. Uh, the investigation for it was put through an oversight committee that the governor dismissed. And the GOP voted to allow that oversight committee to be dismissed after it was after they opposed it, after the Democrats opposed the governor dismissing his own oversight committee that was looking into him doing bad shit. So
Oh.
the same thing happened in Georgia before the last governor's election, which is why they have the governor they currently have. Is that the governor decided, hey, we're going to purge the voter rolls because poor people don't have enough time to actually get back on them in time. And then he mysteriously just got rid of the people who were looking into it for no reason in particular. That's still under investigation on a federal level, though, so that's at least good. That'll probably eventually get brought up to the public after he's retired.
After he's retired, and they won't put
That's
him
how it
in
always
jail.
works.
Yeah.
I, okay, so like, uh, in my home state of Wisconsin, the governor of Wisconsin lost like half of their staff to voter irregularity, voter crime, all kinds of crimes having to do with election funding, paperwork, all this other stuff. Much like the president of the United States, former president of the United States, Donald Trump, it's amazing how many people these people hire that they keep replacing like their entire staff for being corrupt. But yet they themselves are always perfectly okay. Like the most unlucky two people in all of politics, Scott Walker and Donald Trump. Just keep trusting the wrong people.
Yeah, it's totally what it is.
Yeah.
I'd continue with that line of sarcasm, but I can't actually bring myself to say that either one of them was a decent human being, even sarcastically.
Yeah.
I guess moving on a little bit, there's a bunch of provisions in here for voter security, election security.
Mm-hmm.
The voter verified paper ballots, and also directs the National Science Foundation to make grants to study, test, and develop accessible paper ballot voting, verification, and casting mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
So, more voter security sounds right, but if the Democrats manage to get this to pass, it doesn't matter what they do. I don't think it matters what they actually do or what its actual effect on election security is. The kind of people that supported Donald Trump and still support Donald Trump are going to insist that because this law went through that the elections are less secure.
I mean, they're already doing that.
Yeah.
Forbes and another one of those like big business peoples are already going around spending like millions of dollars saying how every election from now until future forever after this bill gets passed by the Senate will be just a rigged election going forward entirely. Fox News has been nothing but a fountain of lies. Like they straight up say things that aren't in the bill are in the bill. They straight up say that things that are in the bill of what they actually do, and they're just saying that this is just the Democrats rigging all future politics. Now, asterisk, exclamation point. They're technically correct. This does suit the needs of the Democrats.
Yeah.
Which is getting more Democratic voters, but that's only because Republicans can't win federal elections without cheating. They can't. I looked into it. It's actually the math I was talking about. The Republicans don't win very much on the federal level in terms of by number, by popular vote. Just as a really quick way of pointing out, I had more details I wanted to share, but I'm gonna cut it short just because we're already kind of long here.
I mean, we're coming up on an hour.
Yeah. Since Jimmy Carter was president, 2.5 million more Democrats, 2.5 million more people have voted Democrat than Republican. Now, if you instead focus directly on the conservative renaissance, just to Reagan and first Bush administration, it's a sweep. 33 million more votes for Republicans than Democrats, right? I left out independents because they're anyway. So the people who run independently haven't put together a solid candidate yet. It's not my fault. I mean, Ross Perot had interesting things to say, but
what about Bill Weld?
What about him?
I mean, he's not the worst candidate to ever run on the independent ticket, or the libertarian ticket, or the Democrat ticket, or the Republican ticket.
Out of all the politicians who have run and actually gotten really to like us to my radar of any real strength to run for president, there's only two of them I actually want to vote for, and that would be Bernie Sanders and Lawrence Lessig.
I don't know who the second one is, but yeah, I wouldn't want to vote for Bill Weld either. But
I'm going back to Carter on this one too. Like since Carter, the only Democrats or people I want to vote for since then.
Oh, the only Democrats. Okay, I was gonna say, what about oh, what's his nuts from Maryland? If he runs on the Republican ticket for presidency
He
in
hasn't
four
run
years,
yet.
he hasn't
He
run
hasn't
yet.
run yet.
Well, that's fair.
If he runs, if Hogan runs, I'm voting. I will strongly consider voting for Hogan. If we're gonna live in a right leaning country, anyways, why not have the one guy who's gonna leave the gays alone?
I mean, and do things about a pandemic and
I mean, yeah, a person who is conservative and otherwise a competent statesman and leader, but also for a conservative is willing to be socially hands off on the
this
wheel.
this thing that Willow's talking about right now. You know, the GOP, if the system was de-rigged, to be forced to adapt and become more moderate in order to win federal elections. Well,
Yep,
here we have fuck, what is his name? You've said it. The governor of Maryland. What's his name?
Hogan.
Yeah, Hogan. Like the fucking heroes. Gotcha. You know, actually enforced COVID restrictions to reduce the spread.
Yeah,
Um, actually does, you know, things that make sense, not just because it's Republican. Like Maryland has a universal background check law and has for years now. It's a little bit more onerous than the one even the feds are talking about passing. Like if I wanted to sell you a gun in the state of Maryland, we'd both have to go to the state police barracks and you know, they'd run a background check on you, and then we would both leave and wait 10 days, and then go back to the state police barracks where I would hand you a gun and you would hand me money in the presence of the cops. Which is,
that's more than I've been looking for.
yeah, that's really more than that is so much more inconvenient that I think it's probably too much of a barrier. But anyway, that's under
Yeah,
Hogan. That's
yeah,
under Hogan. That's a Republican I could vote for. He's not just opposing change. He's just for the sake of being contradictory. He's not just um, he's not regressive. He's just trying to make sure that the change that happens in Maryland is measured and analyzed before it happens.
yeah. Um. Anyways, yeah. But so if you take out the conservative renaissance, the fallout of the conservative renaissance was that it's a difference of 40 million Americans who, after Reagan lied his way to the wealthiest not working class ever in the history of America again, and the economy crashed because of it, costing the Republican Party the re-election campaign. People blame it on Ross. No, it's not Ross Perot. It was, and every voter who talked about it said this, that the reason why they voted for Ross Perot over going for Bush was he broke his promise about no new taxes. That's what they said. Those are those people. That's why. So had he not had to recover, that was a result of Reaganomics, and for some reason the continued resurgence of them, they could have kept going. But after that, the Democrats have won all but one popular vote since then. Uh, what fucking year was that? 92. So since the third season of the Ninja Turtles cartoon, uh, what? Why do I just know that? Because the guy who did the voice for Shredder also was Uncle Phil on Fresh Prince of Bel Air. And if those two streams converge, you're required to remember that. I think I speak for everybody on that.
Sure.
So the reason why I know the average person is 38 years old in this country right now is that means that for the average American's lifetime, Democrats have been the majority party, but the minority power, which is why I wanted to bring that up. That and that's it's true on the state level and the local level as well. Democrats have overwhelmingly people who vote Democrat, people who vote against regressive right wing extremism have outnumbered those other people who do vote for those things for the entire lifespan of most Americans in this country right now that are alive. And yet it takes this bill, which is not like the answer, for how to fix the politics and democracy of this country, but it's a really strong step in the correct direction and fixes a lot of the institutional problems that'll prevent future politicians from making the additional changes necessary. We have to go this far to do that. I mean, this is just a sign of just how awful things have been, and the fact that you got people like Mitch McConnell. The verb is droning, droning on about how this is how it's a slim victory by Democrats that is leading to this massive overhaul of the government. That's not what it is. It's that for decades, for almost 40 years, this country has been trying to keep this direction, but the Republicans have cheated their way to controlling and destroying everything the way they have been. I actually sat down for about an hour today looking for a positive change that the Republican Party has made that has actually improved the country and put us on a better track for the future, and I could not find one. I tried. I could not find a bill that was a unilateral GOP project. I could not find a presidential policy. Nothing for the last 40 years that was unilaterally Republican, unilaterally conservative. That was a positive step for our country. The closest thing I found was when Sanders and McCain got together to help out veterans. Or there was also I almost forgot this. Is it McCain Feingold?
Death
Yeah.
cults don't improve things.
So so basically, John McCain. John McCain worked on several bills to help the country out when the rest of the Republicans fucking wouldn't. And other than him, it seems that no one else gives a fuck on that side of the aisle.
That's fair. That is, yeah. I don't have a lot of input on this.
Um,
For
I,
for
I,
for most of that time that I was politically aware, I would have been on the opposite side of the table.
uh,
So,
President Obama was the first person who was a Democrat that I wanted to vote for. I've always been pretty willing to look on either side for what I liked, what I didn't like. In fact, when the race was McCain and Clinton, I was hard leaning with McCain. And then I saw this junior senator from Illinois fucking bend McCain over a goddamn stump and beat his ass in with facts and actual like understanding of how things actually work and how things should work. Whereas McCain was a true patriot, but he was also a horribly detached elite that was politics as usual for most of his stuff.
yeah.
And he just got taken for a fucking ride by Obama.
Yeah, I mean, he could have mitigated a lot of that. He still wouldn't have won, but he could have mitigated a lot of that by not picking what's her nuts for VP.
He didn't.
Like, not he could have rejected that shit. He could have been like, "No, I'm not right. She's nuts. Are you trying to torpedo this campaign? Because that's what you're doing." Uh,
Yeah. Well, okay. Here's the thing. So he would have lost and gained some on that because most of the people who were going to vote for Hillary jump ship for McCain specifically because of Penguin being on the ticket. And if I remember the numbers vaguely correctly, there were so many women who jumped over from being Democrats to being Republicans for that election that any amount of money he would have picked up on Republicans who didn't vote would have been lost by losing so many of the Democrats who did vote for him from the Hillary camp. So I think it would have been the same either way. I'm
yeah, like I said, I don't think it would have changed the outcome, but
trying to think of anyone he could have picked besides him that would have been. I can't think of anybody that he could have picked that would have been better.
nah.
I mean, okay, I can think of literally anyone that could have been better as a person,
But not
as
one
a
that would have
vice
changed the
president.
outcome.
But no one that would give him a sizable enough difference for the outcome. No. Man, that was weird fucking election. Anywho,
Anywho,
uh,
next
the,
section of the bill, huh?
I was gonna say the gerrymandering stuff is pretty rad.
Oh,
Um,
we hadn't gotten down there yet. I suppose we can skip over campaign finance reform because we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier.
well, that's gonna be the part that's just thrown out by the Supreme Court. I'm not, I read through it, a bit of it, and none of that's gonna fucking stick.
So here's my favorite part of this so far is the ethics piece of the bill
Hmm.
that would require the president and vice president, as well as presidential and vice presidential candidates, to publicly disclose their previous 10 years of income tax returns.
Yeah.
It also would eliminate the use of taxpayer money by members of Congress to settle employment discrimination claims. Uh, Another part of the bill would require the Judicial Conference to establish rules of ethics binding the Supreme Court of the United States, the only court in the United States without a binding canon of judicial ethics.
Yeah.
I didn't know the Supreme Court didn't have a binding code of ethics.
They make their own rules.
Yeah, they need a binding code of ethics.
That's actually a big thing the Democrats have been talking about is that the Supreme Court's gotten really fucking lazy lately, and it hasn't been coming to session or talking to each other. And that's literally all they're supposed to do. Like that's like 100% their job is to come together in a room surrounded by books, hear people talk about stuff, read things, and then talk to each other, and then come up with a solution that's supposed to be the most constitutional. That's their only fucking thing. But since no one can really tell them what to do, they're like, I don't want to hear what the other person has to say, so I'm not showing up today, and no one can fucking fire me for it. So I'm not going to show up. Uh, which is unfortunately one of the side effects of getting. It's not that conservative judges are lazy, is that these particular judges, the more conservative the Supreme Court has gotten, the less work they have done. And I don't know why. I've always been told that conservatives have a great work ethic. That
Yeah,
liberal
right?
people are just better workers. And these are some of the richest, most educated, oldest people in our country, and yet the most working people in our country just can't get together and do a thing. So I'm glad that they're putting up a thing, actually creating a thing. Um, oh, campaign finance. There actually is one thing I thought that was really cool, which was that it would change campaign finance laws. One of the big barriers for people coming into politics from like the not political world and who aren't wealthy is that they can't afford to leave their job, support their family, and run for office at the same time. Normally, you can use your campaign funds to pay yourself some money to work, but it has to be no more than what you would earn on the job that you're actually running for. And a lot of public positions pay less than a lot of professional positions do. So a lot of people then can't afford to like take care of their ailing father who's in the nursing home anymore. Also, they lose their health insurance because we live in like the country where that's a thing.
Yeah.
So this bill also includes a provision that would allow people like the single mother who works at a professional job as a lawyer who wants to like run for office to help reform things. Uh, Warren, this is what I'm talking about. She wants to run for office to help reform things. Well, now she can use those funds to take care of her mom and her kid, also, up to a reasonable amount. It also increases the amount of money. It decreases the threshold required for the returning of issued funds from a campaign that people have to pay back to the donors once they are done. Also requires people who enter as lobbyists to give back that money, which currently they don't have to, and that's stupid. It's really dumb.
Yeah. Um, so gerrymandering is like almost coming up, right? I
That's
think
next.
it's almost next. I wanted to touch briefly on the fact that this bill includes findings in support of statehood for the District of Columbia.
Hmm.
Uh, that's nothing new or terribly controversial. Apparently, the Article 4 of the Constitution actually gives Congress the authority to admit DC as a state while maintaining a non-state, um, like federal park type thing, the
Hmm.
Capitol complex, White House National Mall, all that good nonsense, would just be not part of the state of DC.
Makes sense.
And I thought that was pretty fucking neat because I grew up near DC. Those people need to be a state.
I think that if Rhode Island gets to have people in Congress as a state, every collection of Americans that is at least as big as Rhode Island should be allowed to be that. Like Puerto Rico, it's got more people in it, more Americans in it than like was it 6 states? Several of the Pacific Islands have as many people as Rhode Island. And if nothing else, you can combine a few of them if you really want to until they become something the size of Rhode Island and make them a state in law. Like you can have, like Western Pacific, blah blah blah, and Eastern Pacific, blah blah blah, Puerto Rico, and um, DC as new states. And you know what? I think everyone would be okay with that for the most part, especially when that's actually brought up by John Oliver years ago that they have the largest rates of American servicemen and women of any other place where people live. Island folk are more than willing to, wear the flag on their shoulder.
I did meet a disproportionate number of Marines from like Guam and American Samoa.
Oh, I have okay. Real quick, short story about me and Samoans. So I'm a built guy, right? I'm big, and when I was really fit for the army and basic training and stuff, like I was still pretty, meaty. I'm in basic training. I'm running my heart out. I was a runner at the time, uh, and I was running pretty really well to the point where I was surprising a lot of people. Right, I felt pretty good. I was getting a good clip in, really running, really running. Two Samoans who were like 6'3" ish and easily 300 pounds each just cruised by me like I was tying my shoes in morning PT. Just boom, and you just hear a boom, 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 boom coming up behind you. And I asked my drill sergeant because I was curious, like, who are those huge guys? Is that like a special forces thing I don't know about? And he goes, no, there's just a lot of Samoans in this most recent training group, and they're just really big and fast. We don't know why.
This training was not designed for them.
Yeah, I got to my second training, and one of my drill sergeants was Samoan, and you had this voice. You just need to tell you what to do. And half of every other sentence he would say to you was PT go for me, PT go for you, huh? Because he was all about PT. That guy would make you do push-ups for no. He would ask you, "Want to do push-ups with me? What's your push-ups?" And he wouldn't tell you to do push-ups. He'd just ask you if you were in the mood for some push-ups. And you get down, and he's just yelling, "PT good for me, PT good for you, huh?" As you're doing push-ups with this guy, and he is just muscle, 6.5 feet tall, 200 pounds of straight up muscle, the fastest, strongest thing I've ever seen in person. And it was very intimidating, extremely intimidating. But
That
anyways, so there's a lot of those people around.
yeah,
They should get to vote
they
and have
should get to
senators and
vote.
stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, they get to vote. That's the thing is all these guys get the Puerto Ricans, they get to vote in elections. They just aren't counted. Because the popular vote doesn't matter. It's all electoral college, and since they don't have electoral college representation, they don't. And since they don't get senators that actually get a vote in the Senate on law, they don't also get that either. So
Yeah.
uh, a move towards statehood is a good move.
Well, see, I think like the difference between DC and Puerto Rico, DC wants to be a state. The people that live in DC want representation. Every time Puerto Rico has been given an opportunity to decide whether or not it wants to be a state, they've been like, "Nah, bro. We like having all the benefits of being a state with none of the responsibility."
Mm, last I checked, the last 3 or 4 things were just below the required amount because it requires a supermajority and approval from Congress.
Hmm.
They were always last I checked, it was like 60% for the last 40 years, between 55 and 60% for the last 40 years.
I'll have to look back into it. It's been a minute.
Yeah, and more recently, definitely, that's been changing because the reason why they got all their funding for hurricane relief pulled is because they don't have representation in Congress. They're not a state. If they were a state, they would be getting federal funding still to help them out. Well,
Yeah.
they're getting federal funding, but it's an insultingly low number. It's like $50,000 or something. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. So gerrymandering,
Yeah,
because we're
gerrymandering.
we're coming up on 10 minutes till scheduled end of show. Puerto Rico
Um,
has voted 2 times in a row and it was above threshold. Okay, gotta go check that out.
well, while you're doing that, this would establish a nonpartisan gerrymandering board that actually would prohibit uh, non-scientific gerrymandering for um, the federal elections.
Okay.
A commission of 50 people, 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 5 Independents, uh, and then the people would select a districting map that would work for that. The 5 criteria they would use is population equality, because right now, as you've pointed out several times, districts are not close to equal at this point.
No.
Compliance with Voting Rights Act, compliance with the additional racial requirements, no retrogression, dilution of minorities, blah blah blah, and respect for political subdivisions and for the communities of interest, and no undue advantage for any party. So uh, that's a tough needle to thread, but statisticians have shown several times that it's possible. Um, that being said, a lot of that would be completely irrelevant if we just got rid of the goddamn electoral college, and this would still be relevant for the House Representatives, which is important. Um, and since we're not going to change that anytime soon, I think this is important because it'll actually get uh, 60% of the seats right now in the government would be without challenge would be Democrat right now if things were done by without not counting voter suppression, just counting just the issue of gerrymandering. The country's federal government would be 60% not Republican. Straight up. Counting voter suppression, it's quite a bit higher. But the one we can actually prove with numbers is blah blah blah. And there's an interesting rubric which is I'll save that one for later. But they have some really cool numbers for figuring out how much how badly voters are being screwed by gerrymandering on district to district level. That one I'll get to later. We should probably do our next show on gerrymandering. That'd be a lot of fun.
It would be, yeah. But that would require us to get away from current events and go back to pre-scheduled.
I'll just bring it up whenever we talk about. I'll just break it up into like 5 minute sections and just, oh, that reminds me of gerrymandering that you're talking about there with that sausage factory.
Yeah, I like it. Accidental pre-scheduled topics where we're talking about like the newest hotness on fucking Adult Swim or whatever. That
Yeah.
reminds me of gerrymandering. Let's talk about that.
Master Shake, blah 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 gerrymandering.
God damn it, this congressional district's so goddamn fucked up. My vote ain't counted in 60 years. Meatwad, you're only 2. What? Um.
Exactly.
So yeah, this bill also fucks with the number of federal election commissioners, but I don't know what that means.
So it actually kind of explains it here in this article that there's currently 6.
Mm-hmm.
No more than 3 of whom can be from the same party.
Okay.
And you need at least 4 votes in order to actually do something with the FEC. One thing to note is that our previous president just left empty seats on the FEC, so they couldn't do anything. Anyway,
Sorry, that was that facepalm was entirely involuntary. Like my eyes started twitching and burning. Like Trump, fuck, bud. He could have done like Trump's a shitheel. There's no reason to defend this man, but he could have done an awful fucking lot to not look like as big a shitheel as he was. Are you frozen or are you just smiling at me? Logus? Well, shit. We appear to be experiencing additional technical difficulties. Although I'm gonna screen grab his face there, because that's a good one. Yeah, no, facepalm was facepalmy. I'm seeing Puerto Rico voted yes twice. Yeah, it's frozen all right. But the one of them was kind of weird because the referendum in 2017, the anti-statehood people boycotted it over language stuff. Like they felt like because the petition was in whatever language it was automatically biased pro-statehood. So that vote was like 98% pro-statehood. And I could understand why maybe that one didn't get acted on. But, you know, that's a thing. Yeah, I think we relatively well covered the For the People Act. Mostly just makes elections not be shitty anymore. Although it still includes, like, it doesn't do anything. It introduces a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United, but doesn't do anything to introduce a constitutional amendment to get rid of the fucking Electoral College, which is another huge problem. A pro-independence like Puerto Rico as its own nation back in the 60s and 70s? I don't remember that. I would have hoped that I would have heard about that. That would have been a big deal to my family. I still got aunts and uncles and cousins that live in Aguada. Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to do some learning. It has been a minute. I've hardly ever talked to any of my family in Puerto Rico, and Granddaddy hasn't been back in a long, long time. Yeah, Logus is gone. I know Logus is gone. I'm giving this 2 more minutes before I wrap shit up and take it to off-air open discussion and maybe mute Def while I call him and make sure they didn't explode. I would have been way funnier if I told you Logus wasn't gone and that I was the only one that could hear him. Or that he was telling me I should read golden tablets out of a hat or something. That would have been pretty rad. But yeah, nah, screw the 2 minutes. Apparently Logus's computer took a dive. So, I think I am going to call the stream here. I hope it's been in some way entertaining or informative. I'm glad I didn't miss this one. We'll figure. I think gerrymandering's a good topic for next week. We'll probably do that. I looked through the permissions for those of you who might want to hang out in off-air open discussion, and it shouldn't require you to be on push to talk. Yeah. Ping me if that's not the case, and I'll make a further attempt to fix it. Y'all have a good night. Thanks for watching. Click a button, click a bell, tell your friends, because totally what I need is more people I don't know coming in here and paying attention to me talk about shit I don't understand. Yeah, it sounds like the most entertaining thing ever. Y'all have a good night, and I'll see you next time. Where's the button? There's the button. Yeah, button.